Hey guys, welcome to another Discovery one with no drive. It's obviously back on the road, so stay tuned to find out more. So going into a bit more detail of putting the automatic transmission back in, it wasn't easy. I knew it wasn't going to be easy, but it needed to be done. It was just one of those things that needed to be done. So not much information on the forums, just a few little things here and there that helped me out, just in terms of easier ways to actually install it, and a little bit of advice as well from a friend who does it for a living, and one of those was actually having the car on a decline. So initially when I took it out, I had it on an incline, so on some ramps. So before I put it back in, I actually got the tractor out and actually towed it back off of the ramp, and then I actually towed it back up backwards onto the ramp. So the reason for that is when you're mating up the gearbox to the engine, you want it to fall into place, but not so much that the torque converter is going to actually fall out, because that's literally just sitting there on a spline, and it's easy to dismount it when you're actually installing it if you knock it around. Because the way I did it, which is definitely a backyard way of doing it, I had the engine crane through the camera side there. I had a engine crane holding the actual gearbox through this tunnel here, because this is all out when you're actually putting it in. So you've got to take all this out, and all you got is the actual tunnel there. So you've got the gearbox underneath, so I wrestled it underneath, and then you just lift it up with the engine crane, and you get it to a point where you can actually push it to the actual engine. And you've got to do all that whilst the torque converter is mated up to the gearbox itself. So yeah, having those long bolts coming through the bell housing of the engine to pull it together, because you're underneath pushing it and trying to hold it there, go out and around, because I was doing this by myself, remember, and I would actually move the engine crane a little bit closer, and we're pretty tight. We had the engine crane was sitting literally here by the end of it, and yeah, it was pretty tight fit, quite frustrating at times. Yeah, there was a lot of balancing as well, and once I've got everything lined up, I could then put the actual bolts in and start torquing things up. But before I did all that, you actually have to bolt the torque converter to the flywheel of the engine, and yeah, that's not easy. You got to actually turn the engine over to find the holes, and as I was saying before, you only got a little hole where you can actually see in to marry up the holes for the bolts to bolt it to the actual flywheel. So yeah, that was quite difficult, looking in there with a torch. And I think because you don't need to turn it much, the engine itself, so you put a 27mm socket onto the harmonic balancer and turn it over that way. You just have it in neutral, of course. Actually disregard that, doesn't even matter because there's no gearbox to hold the engine there, it's just going to turn over anyway. So yeah, did that, and then put the bolts back in through the flywheel, through the torque converter to marry it up to the engine, because that's where all the drive goes. and put some Loctite on that because I didn't want them to come undone, because you can do them up to torque spec, but I just wanted a little, not tight Loctite, just the medium stuff. So it's going to sit there nice, and then you put the plate back on, and then yeah, you marry it up. It's got to sit flush though, because if that torque converter's not in properly, it can bind up everything and then you'll be back to where you were. It's on the road, so it's been great. It's probably actually been 4 months, I reckon, and we drive it as a daily, so 100 k's a day, 5 days a week. So it's going well. A few other things have happened to it, engine-wise, like oil leaks and all the rest, normal stuff. I've changed the steering box because they leak like a sieve. Yeah, so I think what we'll do from here is we'll just go for a drive and get some shots of the Disco doing what it does best, hitting the trails and enjoying it.